All right. Hi there, and welcome to today's episode of Grim Litany of Librarians. I'm joined today by Emmy Award-winning Sean Van Damey. Yes, I said it right. Perfect. Um, and we're gonna be talking about writing chase scenes for your adventures in Zweihander. So, hey, Sean, go ahead and introduce yourself. Your captions also aren't working. Oh, wait, nope. I take that back. They are too low. Give me a moment. There we go. Yeah. Yeah. So Zweihander has some really nice mechanics for handling the chase scene. Uh, that I don't think I've actually really seen one like this. I know that I think it's Exalted has something where like you can do it like cards, and I think Pathfinder also does something similar to that. But Zweihander doesn't do that, right? Uh, yep. Pursuer, escapee, and escape value. Mm-hmm. Right, because that's the thing I think about Zweihander is that it is by itself a system that was written with theater of the mind in mind. Right, because it has the chase tracker sheet, right? Yeah, I've never actually used those in my own games, simply because I play online, so I don't really bother with that stuff. I just have it up here. Right, right. Yeah, yeah, because that is something that I have come to appreciate now that I'm a little bit older about fourth edition is the skill challenges and the design philosophy behind them. Yeah. Right. So, you mentioned the chase scene in the in between, right? So I've played the in between, and we got to that chase scene before our show went on hiatus. And I really liked that chase scene. So let's break it down. Oh, you are apparently silent. Ooh, that's odd. You know why? It's because my thing is doing things wrong. Thank you for that catch. There we go. Thank you, Sunrat. Go ahead and try again, Sean.
All right. So it starts at the beginning of the third act of the game, and you've met this caravan of people who are on the run, and they're stuck in the netherworld where the party is also stuck. And then you get attacked by the main antagonist. She's got all these zombies. So you jump on the carts and you start kind of running through this forest towards this tower. So you're on a cart. There's NPCs. Some are combatants. Some are non-combatants, and you just got zombies behind you. So you get this kind of propulsive car chase kind of thing going, and it's well how it lets you kind of think more. It's not just oh we're running now. It's we're on a thing and it's running, and how do I help that thing? How do I slow down the people behind me?
Right.
Because I think when you design a chase and it's just oh we're running now from the bad guys, it can get really dull really quick unless it's like a real short chase.
Right.
But I wanted this chase to be kind of an intro showstopper, especially because of the flow of that act is chase, kind of slow investigation, and then everything goes to hell. And then that act ends. So
Yeah.
it needed to be a high action chase. And so then you put complications, I think, to get those chases working. Don't wait for players to roll complications on a complication table. Build them into the premise of the chase.
Right.
That's what the carts do.
I remember in our version of it, we didn't have enough we did not have enough space for everybody to fit on the cart is what I think Matt said.
Right.
So if we had all gotten on the cart, then some people would have stayed behind. So what we did is we loaded up Will's character, who had the veteran's boot drawback and thus
Right. Because
couldn't
he wasn't
run.
running.
Yeah, and there was enough people, or there was enough space for him to be on there, and not boot anybody else off. And the rest of us we ran with the cart. And what Will's character did was he started throwing out luggage, I think it was, to make complications uh, for
The undead.
the undead chasing us. Yeah, and I think it was also we also had those hellhounds chasing us too.
Yeah, yeah. She's got the Annabella's brought the undead and her the hellhounds that you fought earlier
Yeah,
in the adventure in the first act that kill the MacGuffin dude who gets you into the adventure.
yeah,
So I guess like the way I think about chases, and then you have that complication table, which is where you can get real fun and creative. In so in this Vihander chase system, whenever you do poorly with your roll, you have a chance to get a complication. And there's like a complication table in the book for like locations, like when you're in a city or you're in a house, and like it can really add like depth to the chase and like role playing options as things happen.
Hmm.
And so I think when you're writing your own adventure, if you've got something kind of a strong thematic area, it's best to write your own complication table because that's where you're going to get that chase to really sing and stand apart from just a standard generic chase um, that a GM threw together by looking at the book for 5 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly, because like it when you're because you're writing the adventure yourself. There's no reason for you to just go, "Hey, I'm gonna just pull this book or this chase scene from, or not chase scene, this chase complications table from the book." You have the power to write your own complications.
Yeah, and whenever you have the ability to write your own stuff, you have the time. It's best to do it. Your game will be better for it. The stuff in the book is very much inspirational. It's a good thing to give you ideas. Like I read all of it, kind of backwards engineered it, and then figured out how do I make all of those things horrific and scary. Because of course the in between is a horror adventure.
Yeah.
Um, like there's a chase in the fourth part of the Concordance of Freedom where you're escaping from like a tenement building, and I wrote a small complication table for that, and it's all about like people you meet on the side of the building and stairs falling, and it's got a very urban, like the jungle feel to it because it's very you want that to push forward the narrative of the location.
Hmm.
And so that's really how I think when I'm like thinking through a chase, because I find they're the easiest thing to put in an outline and then can take the longest to write. Because in the outline you just write, and then there's a chase sequence here, and they run to this place. Kind of like how combat is always, and then they fight.
Yeah.
Um, and then you realize that that actually requires a lot of actual design on your part later, and you're like, curses.
Why didn't I write
Um,
this myself
yeah,
before the
or
game?
why did I think this was easy here, and be like as a throwaway. Then you're like, no, that's 3 pages of text you have to generate. But they chases are fun. They break up the types of action that you're getting. Because I think a lot of times people are like, oh, well, this social interaction didn't go how we were planning, so it's a combat encounter. And I think players are always more excited when they're expecting a combat encounter and they get a chase. Excuse me, because it breaks up what they were doing, which is just kind of RP combat, RP combat, RP combat. You get to really have something else going on.
Right. Yeah. I'm sorry. One moment, please. Somebody has a loudspeaker outside. I'm gonna go close my window.
Okay, how dare they? Oh, I'm in charge now.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that.
That's all right. I took over the stream. Um, no, yeah. So that's like kind of as I'm thinking of how like you balance when you want to put a chase in. I try to put one in at least one or two in every like larger section of game, like if you've broken it into acts or whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
because it's just a good extra thing, and you get variety of action is really what they're great for, is just a breakup of the variety.
Right. And they do have like a different feeling depending on whether or not the players are the pursuers or the escapees too. Right.
Yeah, for sure. I tend to write chases where the players are the escapees.
Mm-hmm.
um but yeah, if they're the pursuers, you work in things about like tracking, if they had planned anything before the chase kind of happens. It's like you have to kind of approach it almost backwards, because it's very easy to write it as the players are running away.
Yeah.
That's usually what's happening. They've done something, it's failed, they did something stupid. um because they're players.
Yep, like they poked the bear.
Right. Um, or sometimes they're running away from a combat encounter that they don't want to have, or they know they can't win.
Right.
And but so if you're like kind of writing the chase, you got to figure out first why are they doing like the chase and how did they get there, and then so you as the writer have to then start doing more kind of pre-thinking about what the characters how they got into that position, and that becomes a lot harder as an adventure writer than the players running away is, because anytime I don't have to assume what some other group is doing, then the narrative and the adventure are stronger.
Yeah, because
structurally,
because you know already what the one group is doing, and that's the NPC group that you're writing.
Right, and I have more control over that NPC group than I do over the numerous player groups that will eventually throw themselves at this adventure.
Yeah.
Because really the goal when I find the goal when I'm writing is to not like I don't want to funnel players into where I think they should go, but the idea is I try not to put them in situations where I have to come up with like 20 different outcomes. It's where I can go, well, this is the logical major outcome, and I can then in a couple of sentences cover other odd outcomes. So that helps the adventure kind of stay on its logic path. I always say it's a highway. We can change lanes along the way, but we're all going to the beach.
Right. That's a really nice saying, actually.
I know. It occurred to me when I was on the highway. And so it's a chase is another lane you can get in. So like your lanes could be your chase, your social, your combat, and it's good to sometimes funnel them into a lane like a chase, and they're exceptionally useful also for moving locations.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like with and for moving them the direction you want the players to go. Like with the Beast of Jalen's Mire, I do have a chase scene in that one at the very end. It's not a very well written chase scene because it was my first one, and I was just like, I'm gonna just throw together this basic beginning adventure. Don't get too complicated with it. And basically, they have to do is they have to chase the monster and it leads them back to its den, and then they fight the monster at its den.
Right.
But my players always manage to somehow either set up themselves so that they're in the path of the monster, or they manage to catch up to the monster and fight it.
Right.
Which is something you have to think about when you're doing a chase scene.
It's a lot easier to also, when the players are the escapees, for them not to break other stuff around the adventure. Yeah, like in the chase scene in the in-between, I know I wanted to introduce another set of NPCs, and then I wanted to get the players to Annabella's tower.
Right.
And it's like, well, what's the best way to do that without like really kind of in an exciting way? And that way is a chase.
Right.
You throw some zombies there. You put a raven in a tree that kind of, is like pointing in a direction, and you're off to the races.
Yeah.
The chases.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. I'm trying to think of like. I myself like to write the NPCs as the pursuers because, like even in the instance of where the players do catch up with the creature or NPC or what have you, beforehand, it does break it up a bit, like, and that's the goal of writing the chase scene. It goes from you can go from that heavy combat thing or that heavy social intrigue thing into that chase thing.
Right. And another kind of cool thing you can do with a chase is to take the beginning of the structure and then pull a little bit of it out.
Mm-hmm.
There's a section at the beginning of the in between where I just needed to move the players from that first combat encounter to a road, and I wanted to then kind of bring in some of like this atmosphere. So all I did was kept the complication table, and then it's like as you're walking, it's just everyone rolls a little complication, and that helped because you still had structure of the moving the party from A to B, but there wasn't that kind of like, oh my god, we have to move and there's something chasing us that's being tracked. So you kind of got you used the structure of the chase, but you used it to kind of RP things forward.
Yeah, I remember I remember that actually. I believe Adam rolled something about soggy boots, if I remember correctly. Was one of the ones that he got, like the mud or something was sucking in his boots, making it
Yeah,
harder for him to walk. And I was like, wow, that's really creepy and atmospheric. I
yeah,
wonder.
because it was all just little creepy things in the dark.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, how did that? Where did Sean get this idea from? And now I know.
Yeah, I backwards broke a chase. Because I felt like it didn't need pursuers. Because
Mm-hmm.
what was making the like the thing that made the chase worrisome was the fact that it was pitch black,
Right.
and that you had no idea, the players had no information, they were just kind of stumbling forward. So we didn't need a tracked thing chasing them, we could just play with that complication table.
Yeah.
But
Because.
the GM, if they wanted to throw a hellhound right behind them, could have turned that into a chase with 5 minutes
Mm-hmm.
of work. um, but yeah, also everyone's first chase is awful. Um, there's a chase in Mullensburg Rising, just the second part of Concordance, where you're escaping from the town as it's burning, and it's bad, and it's almost impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was the first chase I wrote, and I didn't 100% understand the rules, so everyone's first chase is kind of a disaster.
Right. Um. And that's okay that it's a disaster because you are still learning, and that's
Yeah,
something that we got to keep in mind. We are still learning. We are always still learning.
yeah. And the thing about writing adventures, whether you're publishing them or you're just writing them for your friends, is that, I mean, you're always learning and kind of getting a feel for it. It's one of the hardest forms of technical writing I've ever actually encountered.
Mm-hmm.
Is like prose is easy. You just throw words on the page.
Yeah, you
I
just.
mean, there's art to it, but technically it's just throwing words on a page. Same with like scripts. You're just throwing dialogue on a page, and there's a little bit of format, but it's not. You're not having to anticipate people you've never met doing things.
Yeah. And
Um,
that's like the thing you have to keep in mind is you don't know what the other players are gonna be like.
right, and that's what the system, like the systems and the numbers, help you kind of mold what the players are going to do or kind of can do, and
Right.
that's what's great about these kind of light uh, framework systems that Zweihander has, like the chase, like the social interaction, because they give the writer and the GM tools to kind of keep their narrative flowing while not just kind of ad hoc robbing the players of their initiative.
Right. And that's the thing. It's when you're writing adventures, you want player agency. Like you don't want it to be like so open that they just don't engage with the story itself.
Right.
And
Also,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was gonna say, and I think starting with a chase is a good way of doing that as well.
Yeah. And I think also showing them the math right up front, like you're not hiding it, helps a lot with that because then they see the uh, um, consequences of their actions
Mhm.
immediately and in game terms. I think for a little while we like if we go back to kind of how D&D swung hard for like writing everything in hardcore game terms with 4E, and then they swung the opposite direction, doing everything in this natural language, which works well for some things and then works poorly for others because it gets too verbose.
Right.
I think Zweihander kind of and a lot of the like OSRE stuff kind of pulls it back, and it's like there's still a lot of numbers, and you see them point blank as numbers, but then the narrative uh, fluff is like right there for you to use, and they're separate, and so it's easier to see how the game is working because you're not having to pull the game out of the narrative,
Mhm.
which the GM wants to then put that back together when they present it, but when you're writing it and building it, it's great to see them broken apart because then you can see all the numbers and how they are clicking, and that just helps you build a better adventure because you can't work against the numbers, you have to
Right.
work with them.
Uh, we do have a question in chat from
Okay.
Sunrat. They are asking, is there any chance that the Concordance of Freedom will be available in print?
Eventually, I have a lot of stuff on my plate right now, and it's been edited. I just have to do the 300 plus pages of layout, and that's just time consuming.
Yeah, layout is exhausting.
The goal it's on my plate to get it done at some point. Um, but yeah, it's just me, and so things take time.
Yeah, so back to chases. They're good for breaking up. They're good for introducing a new pace. Um, but they don't have to just be on foot.
Right.
Because like in the in between, that's the word I'm looking for. That one, like we mentioned that there was a cart, um, and I believe that there's specific calculations that you do that changes when you're using a cart compared to when you're doing it on foot.
I believe so. I think I didn't look it up deeply when I wrote it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, because there is, and also you can use the chases for different lengths of time as well. So like there, you can go from carts to horses to foot. Um, if you're doing kind of a long chase,
Right.
because you, one of the things I like is that it sets out the distance of a chase. You're like, was this chase being measured in yards or miles? And then how long is it in raw game terms? Is it short, long? Will it take you 15 minutes? Is it designed to take 40? Um, and then yeah, you can introduce different vehicles, and that's always helps break anything up, which is it just variety is the spice of life. But yeah, I do believe there are rules for carts. They might be in it might not be in the core rulebook. That some of that might be in main gauche.
No, I think it's in the. I think most of it's in the core rulebook. The only ones that are changed were, or the only additions in main gauche, I think, were the ones with the specific main gauche vehicles. I think.
Yeah, oh that's right. That's vehicle combat.
Yeah, vehicle combat's in main gauche.
So where are we? This is skills. I know it's here, and I'm going to talk while I flip through the massive text tome. Let's see. But yeah, and everything is well laid out.
Mm-hmm.
It's overland travel, so we're close. I used to know what page chases were on. Yeah, well, I'm sure it's there. I'm not gonna fumble through 600 pages live. That sounds like bad TV.
Yeah.
Um, but there's a lot there that you can make your chase as crunchy or as non-crunchy as you want. Because Zweihander has got a lot of crunch that's just like right there under the surface, and it's always how much do you want to interact with all that crunch that's there.
Yeah, that's something I have noticed myself. Like like with chase scenes, for example, like my one chase scene in the Beast of Jellen's Mire, that's a very easy chase scene. Like all I did was write the monster's speed and if it had a head start or not, do this,
Mm-hmm.
and the rest of it is just the players just have to catch it, or get to its lair. Um, but with yours, you have like the players have to make choices. Like, do we all go on the cart or do we not all go on the cart?
Right. And how are we going to, or as people start to die, or do we defend these NPCs we just met?
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, what do we do? Like, how do you deal with having all this new minutia going on around the simple act of running away?
Yeah, exactly.
Because you never want to just have the chase be we're going from A to B now. Um, it's always to figure out how much you can kind of pile on top and around it without bogging it down.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm kind of planning and writing, I just throw everything at the chase and then I just kind of pull some of the stuff out till it feels like it's at its right kind of level. Um, you have to edit everything. Um, we can't make the Snyder cut of chases. So, um, and that's kind of how I assess them, and I'm always trying to put more interesting things into the chase, um, so that there's dynamism to it,
Right.
especially if because sometimes you'll get that from like having vehicles. Sometimes you get it from the environment. Because like if you're moving through a building, then things are changing constantly. You've got
Oh,
verticality. You can really play with the environment. Whereas if it's just whereas if you've got a flat bit of ground that you're running across, you have to then kind of throw things at the chase.
yeah. Like, uh, if you're only doing like the flat field type thing, you got to think about things like, are there rocks in the way that could cause complications?
Right. Because you're working on things like that. And are there other people that could get sucked into the chase,
Mm-hmm.
or get like be used as distractions
Right.
for the chase? Um, and that's always great. Is just to like, how can I turn this chase into like a vortex that sucks things into it for the players to have to then worry with?
Right. Cause like I think in the in between, initially like Annabelle, I think is her name.
Yeah, Annabella.
Annabella. She doesn't care about the caravan. What she cares about
Right.
is the MacGuffin that the players have.
Uh huh.
And
Yeah, she's just dragged people in because she just needs them to die
yeah,
and become fuel. Like they're just innocent victims.
yeah, exactly. And so that's what and the suitcase there, the MacGuffin suitcase, is like it's a good way to make the or not necessarily the MacGuffin itself, but it's a good way. It's a good example of what you're trying to say. There we go. That's what
Right.
I'm trying to say. It's a good example of what you said.
Right. The spell book in Act Two is the MacGuffin that she cares about.
Mm-hmm.
The the case in Act One that the guy who hired you has is utterly unimportant. It's literally just what got the players on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think if I wrote it again, I would not I put a little too much emphasis, I think, on that case because every party that has played focuses on it for a long time, and it is irrelevant.
Yeah, I forgot about the spell book, and that was what she was actually after was the spell book and not the suitcase.
Yeah.
Because I remember that June, my ogre, she cuffed the suitcase to herself,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's why she was the one with it.
Yeah. Everyone worries about the suitcase, but the suitcase is not. It has no value, like no game value. It's just it's the suitcase with the light from Pulp Fiction, or
Mm-hmm.
that '50s movie that Pulp Fiction's riffing off of with the suitcase, where it's nuclear material.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so like it's good to So that's I lost my train of thought.
So chase scenes are good vortexes for pulling other people in and other
Right.
things.
Yeah, and then like you can almost like you have a chase where it's going somewhere and you need to throw either an item or another NPC at the party, and you can do that with a chase. You just kind of suck them like into the who that other element just kind of gets pulled into the adventure, not of its volition.
Right.
Kind of like in a movie, if you've got a car chase and the villain steals someone's car, all of a sudden that person, if they didn't get thrown out of the car, is now a part of this chase.
Right.
And it's great to do that with the players, to just kind of throw things at them that then might be useful later, or that they have to deal with more now. Because then you can throw in moral conundrums and things like that. And there's nothing quite. That's what makes a chase real fun.
Yeah.
Is when you throw morality into it.
That one of my favorite chase scenes actually from movies was, I think it's the Matrix 2. I think this is the one where it's Neo and Morpheus and Trinity. They're running, and then they're like
On the highway.
On the highway, yeah.
Yeah, that's Reloaded. The second one.
Yeah, because the thing about that is that like they're making they are making the conscious decision to try and get away, and they're dragging regular people into it, and their actions are actually having consequences on that. Like I think at one point, Morpheus cuts something with his katana, and it's like really like ridiculous. But it's a lot of fun, and it introduced a lot of interesting complications in it. Like I think there's a semi truck that Trinity like does that power slide thing under.
Yeah.
With her motorcycle.
I haven't seen that movie in a long time. But yeah. Immediately, because like if they were just like, I guess if you a good way to look at it, with sticking with the Matrix for a moment, is where you've got one chase that's very vertical, and that's like when they're escaping from after they see the Oracle in the first movie,
right?
Where Morpheus gets caught by the agents,
right?
Where they're moving through walls, and that's a great chase scene that you could easily do. Your player's like, well, I'm going to go through the walls here, and the agents are complications, and then you've got the cops coming in. And those are all things that you've sucked into the chase, but it's a short chase, and it's like measured in feet.
Yeah.
Whereas then you've got the highway, which is a longer chase, not just because it's like 20 minutes versus like 5, but it's measured in miles, and it's got more complications. You've got the truck, the cars. There's even different groups kind of involved, because you've got your party, who are the escapees, and then you've got like the ghosts, and you've got the agents, and then you've got an NPC with the party who they're protecting with the keymaster.
Yeah.
And immediately you've just thrown so many things in that it becomes fascinating and interesting, and it's more than just A to B, even though at its base core it's still A to B.
Exactly, yeah. And that's something that I really like doing with chase scenes. It's like that is the strength of a chase scene. It makes the movement, like, whereas with like overland travel, I mean, that's interesting in itself. It's like its own mechanic. Like you're going, but you're essentially just going from point A to point B.
Yeah, and you have to. It's always about finding the excitement and how can I tell more story, and excuse me, get uh, reactions and character and uh, just juice out of the players.
Mm-hmm.
And so putting a lot of stuff onto a chase is great for that. Also, because they don't have a lot of time to sit and debate and think. They have to, it gets very snappy.
Yeah.
Whereas like overland travel it gets dull, it can get drawn out. You have to like kind of find it's harder to find sometimes uh that juice without interjecting side quests. But you can do that in a chase because everything is fast. Everything
Yeah.
is two sentences on the page as opposed to a choice of things that you could see. And
Right.
this is probably why I always travel by map when I play.
Yeah. Uh, let's see. So it's so when it comes to chases, like what are some like so we know we have the Zweihander method of tracking your chases. How else can we track our chases?
You can track your chases. You can have like ooh, I didn't think about this. Like you can know like just kind of you could easily just have like a grid with some distance. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't like it's not hyper like 5 feet, 5 feet, 5 feet,
Right.
but just kind of as a visual, and you can kind of almost loose track it. You can do where everyone has to do something, and the successes versus failures skill challenge, which is how I always did chases up until. And again, almost even Zweihander is still you have to get X amount of things you succeed at
Right.
before you get X amount of things you fail at. Really, that's kind of the best narrative way to do it uh, without introducing a lot more math and uh, grids and things. Um, it's just kind of a simple X passes before X fails.
Right.
If you want to have the option of kind of the players being able to lose.
Right.
Sometimes I run chases where I know the players aren't going to lose. They can't like I have written it where they can't lose. I just want to make sure that them succeeding becomes messy.
Right. Um so like we've talked about like straight up chases, but if I remember correctly, in the back of the Zweihander book, there is the adventure. What's it called again?
Bitter Harvest.
Yeah, Bitter Harvest. Thank you. Uh, they begin with like this marriage thing, and the rules for one of the events that you can participate in is like a sack race.
Oh yeah.
Uh, so that is an interesting way to adapt the chasing rules, because you mentioned a little bit about that that you did something similar with the in between, where you just grabbed the complications table and had the players roll for it.
Yeah.
What are so like we have races that we can use chase scenes for. What else could we potentially use chase scenes for?
Let's see. Races you could use almost where you take out the. You can almost use it for like an argument where you're trying to get someone to. You're trying to convince someone of something.
Mm-hmm.
So, because that's still kind of a narrative, you have to take them from A to B. Like, we're not moving, we're having a conversation.
Right.
But you could then still, where you're kind of chasing down their train of thought, and then you could move complications in there as well. Or it's kind of like, or even an interrogation, you could kind of do the same thing. Because then that becomes mental A to B.
Mm-hmm.
And if you wanted to use the chasing mechanics versus some of the social interaction mechanics, you could do that. And that would be kind of weird, but I think it could be kind of fun.
Well, what you could probably do is actually find a way to meld the two together.
Yeah.
Because, like, if I remember correctly, like the social intrigue rules, because I just read these the other week. They're basically like you do your skill rolls to figure out what the NPC's disposition is towards you, and then the game master uh, role plays that disposition towards you.
Right.
But if you still need them to, and they're having a hard time, like if you know your players have a hard time doing role playing things, it's perfectly fine to have them doing dice role playing things.
Yeah.
And the chase scene adaptation that you are suggesting would probably be a good example of a time where you would do that.
Yeah, I love having I, for every game to have kind of a crutch for um, role playing and social systems, because there are a lot of people who are not comfortable with a high level of just improv extemporaneous gameplay,
Mm-hmm.
and they like having a solid structure that they can then lean on and kind of learn through, whether they're new players, whether they're just awkward, then some people just don't like all of a sudden having to interact in that way.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what they want from um, an RPG at the table. They're there to hang out with their friends and get a story, but they don't necessarily want that uh, responsibility of having to really role play. And having those systems lets them still participate without uh, the fear of not knowing what to say.
Yeah, because that in itself is probably one of the most difficult things to do, is knowing what to say and what you want your character to say.
Yeah, like I'm working on a system for a different game right now that's very much geared towards helping those players still have a ton of agency and interaction, uh, and as much interaction as the players who are going full on, voices, improv, backstory, you know, high level stuff.
Right.
And it comes back to thinking about chases and the social intrigue rules, because you have those are all bases and they're codified.
Mm-hmm.
And it's nice to have all that crunch right there under the hood if you need it.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, and I think that's a balancing act that a lot of RPGs have to deal with. Is you've got a lot of these like rule light systems that are all like kind of loosey goosey, because they're like 5 pages and there's not a lot of rules. And then you've got these other systems that are 700-800 pages. They're 5 books, and it's just we have a rule for everything,
Right.
and there's no. You got to find that middle ground of not needing to interact with every single rule, or the rules have a sheen on top of them so that the players don't see how much crunch is going on if the GM doesn't want them to. But if they want to like interact with the numbers, because that's what makes them more comfortable, especially if you come from video games where you, the player, see all the numbers, that can be helpful.
Right. That is my background with it. Uh, with uh, with games like this, I like being able to see the numbers and interact with the numbers.
Yeah. Um, I'm the same way. I hate math, but I love to see the numbers in any game I'm playing. Like if I'm playing an RPG, a computer RPG, the first thing I do is go into the system and I turn on all the options so that I can see numbers.
Yeah.
I want to see every single bit of damage, healing. I want to see all those numbers. Because it helps me to get a feel for what I'm doing, because the numbers are how you are actually interacting. Like
Right.
I can say, "Oh man, I shattered that guy's arm." And in real life, I understand the impact that has. But in the game, I need to know the numeric impact, because that's whether it's a tabletop game or a computer game, those numbers are what matter
Right.
to the system, at least.
Right. And so we've been going on now for about an hour about how to use chase scenes and how to write chase scenes. I think now is a good time to segue into writing one for our adventure.
Excellent. Let's do it.
So the uh, previously we had decided that the party was gonna either end up going to one of two warehouses, one owned by the Merchants Guild or one owned by the mayor, where they have to deal with the with that there. And that was going to be like a skill. That's gonna be like skill challenge things, but we're doing chase scenes, so maybe this is something that happens after, like as a result of the actions taken in
Right,
the
like they went to the
warehouses.
mayor's warehouse and they got caught,
Yeah,
and maybe they need to get away with some blood schnapps as evidence or something like that.
yeah. So like, let's figure out what do we need for these chase scenes. We need.
So the first thing I always kind of, as I start kind of wide and then move in.
Mhm.
So what's our location? So we're in what, like the dock district here,
It would probably be the dock district docks. Yeah.
right? So we know we've got docks and warehouses, and then we know we're in a warehouse, and then we need to get probably somewhere. I guess safe would be somewhere where there's a lot of people, there's light, somewhere where they can't murder us and then throw our bodies in the water.
Right.
And so immediately we know where the chase is taking place, and then that will help us determine the length of the chase and the distance of the chase.
Mhm.
Because before you can start building your vortex, you have to know, how big is your black hole.
Right.
Um, so we know we start at the warehouse. Let's say we're trying to get to like the town square, um, or like a populated bar or something that is going to be letting out soon.
I think
So
the populated bar might be the good one to go with.
right. So we'll say that's where we're trying to get to. So immediately, and since this is not a very very long adventure, we probably want this to be a short chase,
Mhm.
which should take about 15 minutes of real time.
Right. So that's like 3 rounds, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it's something like 3 rounds, and then it's probably going to be measured in yards, because we're in town. It's not like we're going miles and miles.
Yeah.
So once we've established, and the players are the escapees, and the mayor's lackeys are the chasers, the pursuers. So we've built all of the numeric stuff right off the top, because then because now we can pull the narrative together.
Mhm.
So we know we're being chased by a couple of people. We don't know if they're dudes, and we have the party, and then we've got the the case of blood schnapps, or the um, bottle. I think some of the complications on the, because then I go to, well, what's in my complication table, because that's where I start to really kind of come up with ideas, and I usually write that and then slide back into the chase proper,
Mhm.
because now I've kind of come up with some things that are going to mess with the players. So I'm going to figure out ways to try to break that bottle that they've got, ways to pull that they might accidentally pull bystanders into this chase. How violent are the people behind them being? Are they throwing spears, arrows? Do they have guns? Whatever the level, technology level we're at here is. Uh, are the players able to duck inside things? Um, I would probably use shadows and kind of pull all those things into my complication table.
Mhm.
Um, a real easy one is always to throw an unattended child, at the party. I know some people don't like kids in peril, but it can be lazy, but it's real easy,
Right.
um, as a device. That's one of those things where you have to know your party if you want to use it, but it's great if you're just writing, because you can put it in there. and it's a real good poke point. Um, or maybe they stumble upon something else that's happening and try to, like, if you've got a very moral party, and even though they're running or being chased, if they see something else happening that they feel they need to interject themselves into, those are good things to kind of plot along their way, like someone getting robbed, or just like injustice happening. Because you've always got those parties that are, a whole group of Captain Americas.
Right.
They're real easy to sidetrack into morally dubious stuff. Um, Whereas then if you've got your party of murder hobos, well, they'll probably have turned around and fought the mayor's lackeys. But you're less morally upstanding party. You've got to figure out ways to also throw things at them, and they're always more complicated to kind of trip up because they don't have the same. They're not as easy.
Right.
You don't know what they're gonna do.
They're wild cards.
They're your wild cards, and so I would probably what would I throw at them? Because you also figure out how big you want your complication table to be.
Right.
Well, it's probably going to be 10 because you're using D10s because it's Spy Hunter.
Yeah. I was thinking 10.
But yeah, it's usually 10. But I'm not afraid to use a D6 table, because you've got those at the because those are your Fury dice, so you've got them.
Right.
Also, sometimes I just can't think of 10 things.
Yeah. It could be like, it could also be like maybe they pull more guards in.
Yeah, because you got the town guard. You could easily throw a small role play bit in there where are these guards compromised? And so that becomes a risk that the players have to think about. Or maybe the guards just get involved because they see, commotion going on.
Yeah, exactly.
So guards are a good complication, yeah. Maybe there's a gate between the dock district and where the kind of the mercantile district where that bar is. And so maybe the mayor has sent his lackeys to try to close the gate, or you've got to work your way through that, and that can become a complication that you can throw in. Because, well, are we going to pay our way through it? Are we going to murder our way through it? Do we talk our way through it? Like how,
Right.
And then that can give you a ticking clock too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like if you don't get here by the end of the thing, it's going to be a major setback.
Right. And yeah, that's another a good one. Since it's a short, we figure this is a short chase because it doesn't need to be super long.
Yeah.
It just needs to be kind of a jolt of excitement at the end of an investigative section.
Yeah.
And then it helps the players know that crap, this is bigger than we thought, and now we are in the shit.
Yeah.
Because that's another good thing chases can do, is if players are kind of invested, as soon as someone starts chasing them and threatening their lives because they were on the periphery of something, they are now in the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can use the chase's story vortex and just grab the players and pull them into it. That'd also be a way to start an adventure. If you wanted to start in media res,
yeah,
like they get pulled into someone else's chase and then end up with the MacGuffin at the end, and people are coming after them. But that's a sidetrack to what we're designing here.
Right.
Now I want to write that. All right, no, focus. So yeah, we've got like gates, guards, kids, moral dubious things that they might want to engage with. Um, the people chasing what's one of the good complications in a dock.
Uh, maybe like because it's dock, so there's shipping going on here.
Yeah,
So maybe like
there's
a wagon pulls in front of them.
yeah, and this would be another one of those times where I would go back to the core rule book and look at its complication table for these kind of area for urban areas,
Mm-hmm.
because then I might find something I like and yank some of its mechanics and then just reskin it to fit what I'm doing here, because it's all about where you can steal things from and then just tweak.
Right.
So
Let's.
I would probably do that if I was starting to draw blanks.
Yeah, and looking at it, so we know that blood schnapps itself comes from death hedges,
Right.
which are mutated flowers. So there is an example in the Zweihander core rulebook for etheric phenomena,
Mm-hmm.
with the etheria being, or with the etheria, aether. That's the word. The aether winds. So,
Okay, yeah.
um, do we think that might be something that might happen, or
We could almost like maybe too much jostling movement
mm-hmm.
causes whatever suspension they've created inside the blood juice to get
blood
weak,
juice?
or blood schnapps. It's juice.
It's juice. It's totally. Yeah. No.
It's
No.
just alcoholic juice.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like whatever suspension that they have made so that it's stable and isn't as death hedge potent,
Right.
maybe all the running and the jostling of the chase has caused that to start to come apart a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could bring in um, some etheric wind stuff, and I would then go to the chaos manifestations table for like if you failed a spell that
Yeah.
you were channeling, and then look there and maybe adapt some of the lighter ones, because we want this to just be little complications. We don't need people growing extra arms
Right.
or spawning demons.
Probably be like uh petty chaos stuff.
Yeah. So that and it adds some flavor, because then that also lets the players that shows the players just how dangerous this is.
Right. Because like previously we hadn't really discussed like it's just like a thing that's in the city. But we hadn't really given it any flavoring.
Right.
Uh.
Also, this will help you with the because kind of it's just like, oh, this is a drug that people are taking and we have to morally stamp out the drugs,
Right.
or at least tax the drugs. This shows, crap, this stuff is really actually dangerous, and a danger to not just the people consuming it, but the people around them, because it's unstable.
Right.
And then that we have now added more story just by a complication that came up in the chase, which is cool. Because anytime you can shove story in without having to stop and read a box of text,
Yeah.
it is great.
Absolutely. Um. Let's see. Uh. So what? So it sounds like we have how many do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We have like 10 or 11 or 12 of these samples.
Perfect, because then we can prune.
Yeah, exactly. We can prune. What are some ones that we could probably get rid of?
Um, let's go ahead and get rid of the kid,
Yeah.
and maybe like some of the moral conundrums, because I think for the scale of this adventure, we don't need that.
Yeah.
And then that gives us a better chance of hitting the story stuff.
Right.
And like the gate shows the power that the mayor has, because he's got people everywhere. We learn how dangerous the blood schnapps is, things like that. So we've got more. Those things have more story potential, and still will give the characters choices that will help them with their character building,
Right.
and they don't feel as trite.
All right. Yeah. So.
But I'm always a fan of putting a lot of trite stuff in my outline or whatnot, knowing that I can cut it if I don't need it.
Yeah.
But sometimes you realize, oh, that's the easiest way to do something.
Right.
Tropes are tropes for a reason.
Yeah. Tropes are tools. They're not bad.
Yeah, it's how you use them.
Mm-hmm.
And they became a trope because they work.
Exactly.
Um, so yeah, so there we've got our we know where we're going, we know how long the chase is going to be, we have some complications. So then we figure out how it succeeds or how it fails.
Right.
What happens when those two things happen. And at the same time, when we do, so what happens when we succeed is we get to the bar. It's late, so it's probably last call, and a lot of people are getting out, and we're in a more well lit area of the city.
Mm-hmm.
So just getting there will cause the mayor's men to back off and kind of slink back into the shadows because they can't just knife us here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, and then the players can figure out where they want to go from there. They've kind of just gotten away, but they're not safe. But we're no longer in the strict initiative chase uh, framework.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess if they fail, they get caught, and then it probably turns into a social or a combat encounter.
Right. Fail state. Now, the interesting thing about this is, because like this is, I think a better idea would be intent to write this so that it can be worked for either dealing with the mayor or dealing with the dock merchants.
Yeah.
So one of our things is one of our complications is legitimate authority stepping in. So maybe it changes depending on which faction grabs them. So like you could have the mayor's men, or the cops, or the merchant guilds men.
Right.
And
but like, good as enough of these complications are generic enough that we can, like in a line or two, say what happens when it's these people and this you've gone this direction versus that direction, what lane of the highway you're on.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we can use this, because it doesn't matter which side you went to, the investigation leads to a chase.
Yeah.
Kind of, because like I said, because we're on there's the mayor lane and the shipping guild lane, but they still all go to the beach.
Yeah, exactly.
I hate the term railroading, so I'm trying to come up with other phrases to describe narrative structure.
So what I'm thinking is with the legitimate watchmen who are like not corrupted, maybe they just arrest the players because they have blood schnapps.
Yeah.
And they won't necessarily arrest or won't necessarily kill them. But if the shipping guild catches them, the shipping guild might kill them.
Right. Yeah, your fail states all change based on who you've and the mayor might not kill them either. Right. The mayor might just take it back and threaten them.
Right.
Because the mayor is probably more of a soft power, because he's a politician. He's not a cutthroat murderer. And he might be slightly in over his head too on other sides. So yeah, I think the way we vary the chase is all the fail states are different.
Yeah.
Also, if the legitimate guards are chasing you, the success state would probably change.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to be afraid of the light of the merchant district
Right.
because they're the cops. And so then I guess the success state there would be um, you probably need to get into the crowd, and then the success state is kind of you vanish. Um, you're able to get away from. Becomes a little more murky, I think.
Well, what that could be is maybe they need to get maybe like if the police get involved, because we have the Stevedores Union. Bring the Stevedores
Right.
Union back into it. Maybe they have to get to the Union headquarters to escape the police.
There we go. And then that's also using the fail state and the success state to change the chase based on the people who are after us, after the party. It's not going to burn a lot of text on the page, but it will drastically change everything about the chase. And so we kind of get 3 chases for the price of writing 1.5.
Exactly.
Because the complications are all still basically the same, whether it's the mayor's men trying to close the gate or the shipping guild trying to close the gate. It's still you trying to get through the gate, or the blood schnapps getting unstable. So our complication table works for everyone, and then we just change those in and out states, and then we get a lot more chase bang for our chase buck.
Yep. We're chasing that money.
Well, I mean, that's what everyone's doing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So then we know how long the chase is, we know where it's going, we have our complications. I guess I would just put a graph in each of the fail states for if a player gets caught, but not the whole party fails, because single players can also get separated, and sometimes you need to know what happens there. It's like going back to Concordance, when you're escaping the town, if one player gets separated, I wrote some bits where it's like, well, this is where they store the player, to try to lure the rest of the party back into town, and and if they don't come back for him in enough time, the bad guy hangs them to try to again draw the player out, or the rest of the party out. So it's easy to you can throw a lot of cool complication into a chase by saying what happens when only one character fails. And again, it also doesn't take a lot of page space. It becomes then work for the GM, because it's kind of an outlier scenario, but we give them just enough information to set them on a path, so they have some ideas of what would happen. So it would be like they get arrested, they get used as leverage. The mayor would probably try to sell them back and bribe them.
Right.
Things like that. How we just decide how corrupt do we want parts of this town to be.
Right. So what I'm thinking with that is if the legitimate watch guards capture them, they put the player or players who they caught in jail. The Merchants Guild stashes them in a warehouse to use as leverage, and the mayor does something similar. Stashes the players.
What if the shipping guild just wants their stuff back, and they're like, give it back, and we won't, and go away, and we won't kill you.
Yeah.
The mayor will probably try to use the players to make his position stronger in the town as well. Like, look, we found these people who were running blood schnapps, and all of a sudden then you end up with a political situation,
right,
where you are the fall guys for what you were trying to stop.
Right. To influence the politics of the city. Okay. Yeah, no, I dig that. Fall Guys. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think that it sounds like we have a solid chase together, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, for sure.
All right.
I mean, this is gonna be, and then the chase ends at a. It's always great if you can end a chase at a place that's a great place to end a session.
Mm-hmm.
Because a chase is a great way to end a session.
Right.
And then it's also narratively we've hit a point where there's kind of a little break, and then the players have to go do something else. So the chase hits a good, solid kind of roll credits place,
Right.
which is always nice.
All right.
Whereas like, because other things like social interactions or combat encounters, you always feel like there's more
Right.
afterwards. But chases have they're a great way to end a game session or a act.
They're a perfect. They're the perfect stopping point.
Yeah, whether you succeed or fail.
All right. So, so with that in mind, we are coming up on the end of our hour and a half here. Normally we go for 2 hours, but like the chases are not that complicated.
No, they're not.
So do you have anything you wanna? The term coming to mind is push, but that's not what I mean. Do you have anything you want to showcase? It's still not the right word.
Yeah.
Promote. That's the word.
I would say if you're on the library, check out the In Between. It has a good chase, and it's a nice, tight horror adventure. You can check out the Concordance of Freedom, which is an entire campaign. And then if you're into the Wild West, without those pesky fantasy bits in your Western, you can look into Ballad of the Pistolero, which is a kind of quick play Western RPG. It's lightly rules light. It's just not long. And then I think those are good things I can push that I can talk about.
All right, yeah.
And keep an eye on me on social, because I'll be obsessively talking about this new game that I'm building. If you ever wanted to get a lot of Dragon Age in your Diablo at your kitchen table.
And where can they find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Damie Sean. I think it's. I really should go back and like make a real Twitter handle, and not just something that generated. I'm on the Grim and Perilous Discord, or it's the Spy Hunter Discord, all the time, and those are really the best places to find me. I mean, because that's where I'm at.
Right. Yeah, and I'm Irene. You can find me on Twitch and on Twitter at DMIreneDB, all one word. Let's see. I don't have anything coming out right now. Like, I mean, I have the Beast of Jelensmire, which is hopefully coming out soon. I don't know. We're waiting on some stuff with that, but keep an eye out for that on the Grim and Perilous Library. And let's see, I believe we have shows we have coming up on this channel here, I believe on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. We have the return of Silver and Blood, the adventure run by, I believe, Adam.
Yeah.
And I think there's something else that I'm forgetting. Let me check the schedule.
Yeah. I don't have the schedule.
Let's see. Oh, and it looks like on the 9th, it's going to be the Scarlet Sash of Stories by Hunter Nedland. So keep an eye out for that. And April 11th is going to be the finale of the Grim Litany of Librarians, and we'll figure out what's going on after that next time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you all for watching.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for coming on, Sean.
Always a pleasure.
All right. You all have a good day.